welcome to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for clicking on today's video. I'll be answering some bookish questions today. I made this little jar and I filled it up with all kinds of questions, anything book related that I could think of. And I want to answer 10 of them today, so I'll be taking them out, answering them as I go, and maybe if it's fun I can do a part 2 someday. Okay, let's get into it. I don't think, honestly, this is doing very much at all. They're not moving, so I'm gonna have to be very like... I'm picking one from the middle. Okay, question number 1 is, what is your favorite moment of the day to read? I always read in the morning. I don't know if that's my favorite moment of the day to read though. It might be. But I also love when it's kind of getting dark outside and then I put always like an ambiance thingy on my TV. So like either a ambiance video on YouTube, or sometimes it can be a fire, and then I find it more cozy putting on candles. So I think if I have to pick my favorite moment of the day, it would have to be in the evening. What is a book you loved in a genre you rarely read? Well, that's a difficult question, but I made it, so that's really my own doing. Genres I rarely read, it would either have to be like a thriller, but I honestly can't think the last time I read a thriller, so that's gonna be too difficult maybe. Okay, so I took a look at my bookshelf and I went with this one. This is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott, and I would say this is my favorite classic that I've ever read. I have read a bunch of them, but this one is very thick. But I find it very, I don't know how else to describe it than that it's just a very wholesome read. It is about sisterly bonds mainly, I guess, but also just generally life lessons, family relations, also doing good for your community, and like lots of those kind of themes in here. And it spans years, I'm pretty sure. So you just really get taken along on the journey of these 4 sisters during kind of like a coming of age story in a way. And it's just very good. I would recommend it. What is a book that made you cry? I'm gonna actually look at my shelves for this one. I picked 3 books that off the top of my head definitely made me cry. So the first one I picked is Redeeming 6. This is the second book in the... Okay, no, let me explain that differently. This is the 4th book in the Boys of Tommen series by Chloe Walsh. And this is the 2nd book of the Joey and Aoife story. And honestly, this one and part 1 are one of my favorite books of all time, if not my very, very favorite books of all time. I don't even really know how to explain why, but also who can really explain why a book is their favorite book? I feel like that is an impossible task that, yeah, we don't really know how to do that. But so this story is about Joey and Aoife, and Joey and Aoife meet in the first part of this, like, well, it's not really a duology, but let's say it is a duology for a sec, because this is a, like, I don't even know if there's a word for this. It's like an interconnected standalone, but it's not a standalone because it's a duology, interconnected duology. I don't know. This is one story. That's what I mean. And their story as a whole is just so heartbreaking because, yeah, I wouldn't say this is a spoiler. It's pretty known when you read the series, is that Joey has pretty severe drug addiction, and it's also mainly about them maneuvering his problems together and her trying to be there for him, and then how that all works out. I would say that the part that made me cry the most was definitely the ending of Redeeming 6, because there are a lot of sad moments, and these are very, very heavy books. But the sad moments, I don't even know if they made me cry all that much. It was mainly the wholesome moments where different characters are there for each other, and that was Aoife for Joey and Joey for Aoife, but also a lot of side characters got involved, and it was just such a nice, like, wrapping up of things and making me feel like, I don't know, you just start to feel so much for these characters because you see them go through so much, and then at the end of the story you really just wish the best for them, and then everything that happens just made me cry. The other book that made me cry is One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So this is a book that is about Emma and her husband Jesse, and here it says 364 days after their wedding, Jesse is on a helicopter that goes missing mid-flight. Suddenly he is gone. So Jesse basically goes missing, and at some point he is like, I think it's 3 years later, and Jesse is pronounced dead, but he was never found. And Emma, she's grieved, she's learned to live again, she's fallen in love, and then she's engaged to another man that she also knew before. So now she is engaged, and then Jesse, turns out, was not actually dead, so he comes back. And then she has to deal with having both a fiance and a husband, and that is obviously a very messy situation. And this book is so well written. I love it so much. It is written in a way that I would say I didn't really have a favorite, if that makes sense. So I think in almost every book that has a love triangle, you have one obvious favorite. So either it's obviously the favorite of the main character, or it's obviously your favorite, and usually both, I think. But in this book, I really honestly did not know who she was gonna choose. I didn't know who I wanted her to choose. And that is what made it so heartbreaking when she eventually obviously did have to make a decision. So that is when this book made me cry. And then we have If He Had Been With Me. I think if you have heard about this book at all, you know that it makes a lot of people cry. And I have a suspicion that it was made to make people cry. It is very heartbreaking. In the very beginning, you already learn kind of how the book ends. And then you go a couple years back in time, you read everything that happened up until that point, and then you read the same scene again but in more detail. So you know it's gonna have a devastating ending, and that makes the middle, I think, more devastating in a way. But I have to say I didn't love this book that much. I have mixed feelings on it, let's say, because I did love the ending and it made me feel so much. And when a book makes me cry, when a book makes me feel that much emotions, I am inclined to love it. But also the majority of this book was the main character being in high school, and I thought it was kind of, well, cringe and boring, and not much happened. And I think that is the point in a way, but that still didn't make it an enjoyable read, I would say, for the most part. So yeah, these 3 books are the books that off the top of my head made me cry, but there are more, I'm pretty sure, but these are just the ones that I could think of right now. Question number 4. What is your favorite male main character? Okay, I feel like I'm gonna have to cut soon, because otherwise this video will show me thinking for like 10 minutes. That's not fun for anyone. Okay, I have thought this over for about 5 minutes and I have an answer. So I kind of feel inclined to say Joey, but since I already talked about these books, I'll pick another, because I had 2 that I couldn't really choose between. And then that would be Watson Bakrati, Watts, from the Thousand Floor series by Catherine McGee. I don't know, he's just nice, he's just cute, and he's adorable, and he has a computer kind of AI situation installed in his brain, which is pretty crazy. He's very kind of nerdy character, and I tend to like that. And he had these big dreams to go to this big university, I think it was MIT. I don't know, he just gives off good vibes. I can't really explain it better than that. How many books are on your physical TBR? Well, I did put in this question myself, so it is really my own fault that I'm gonna have to count them now. I just counted them, and there are 50 books on my physical TBR. So that is quite a few that I still have to read, but that's fun, I guess. What is your favorite book so far this year? Okay, that's easy because I keep a reading journal. I log like my favorites of each month, and then I kind of also log them in like a way that I make the favorites of each month compete against each other. So I have my favorite of the whole year at the end. So my favorite of this year so far is Tom Lake by Anne Patchett. And this is about, it takes place during COVID, and it is about Lara, the main character, and her 3 daughters, and they own a orchard where they pick cherries, I'm pretty sure. Yes, cherries. And her daughters want to hear the story of how their mother dated a famous movie star before he was famous. And she dated him while they were both on an acting job, because Lara used to be kind of an actress, but like in the beginning stages of it, if that makes sense. And back then, that famous actor was also in the beginning stages of his acting career. Her daughters have always wanted to hear the story of how their mother dated this famous movie star, and now during COVID, she has decided to finally tell her daughters the tale. It kind of goes back and forth, I'm pretty sure, between 2 different timelines, because the main character, Lara, she tells her daughters the story, but she also basically tells it to the reader, so it kind of feels like a dual timeline situation. Basically, it describes the atmosphere so well, and it describes the orchard, which is so pretty, and just it's a lot about family and about also their kind of mundane family life in a way. And I think something in that really appeals to me. That's kind of the same way I feel about Little Women, which I showed you before, which was my favorite classic. I think these have very similar vibes, which is a dangerous statement to make, seeing as this is a very, very popular classic book. But I would say this gives off similar vibes as to Little Women, except obviously in a lot more modern setting. And this doesn't have the flashbacks to the mother's life, but it does give off the same kind of family feel, I think, because these are also 3 daughters, so that's also 3 sisters. It gave the same sort of family feeling that I loved so much in Little Women. What book would you like to live in and why? So when I wrote this question, I was torn between specifying that it had to be a fantasy world, because I think that might make the question a bit more interesting, but also a lot more difficult, because I don't think I know many fantasy worlds that are actually peaceful and nice to live in at all. Actually, I think I might go with this one again, because this, I didn't talk about this before, but this is I think it's a YA sci-fi, I would say. And it takes place in the year 2118. So it's basically a futuristic setting. It is really like how our world could look like in 100 years, but it is a very positive look into the future, which I feel like is something I really enjoy, because a lot of sci-fi are very dystopian, and this is more a drama set in a sci-fi setting, where the sci-fi part is very optimistic. Everything surrounding like energy, climate, and whatnot is not really an issue anymore. That's all kind of just fixed nicely. And so they all live in this tower, and the way it's described, it looks very nice. Like, I'm generally not a very futuristic person, in the sense that if I had to pick if I could live in the future or the past, I would probably pick the past, because I don't like technology all that much, and it scares me and it doesn't appeal to me. But in this book, the way it's described, it actually sounds a very peaceful future, in which there is a lot of technology kind of integrated in normal daily life, but in a way that sounds fun. So, for example, basically they have this little mini doors in their living room where they can order food, and it just appears. And that, who wouldn't want that? I lost track of what question number I'm on. Let's see. I did this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think I did 7. What is your favorite non-fiction book? Okay, I haven't read all that much non-fiction. Let me brainstorm what I have read, actually, because it's not that much. I feel like I could count it on one hand right now. This year I've read I'm Glad My Mom Died, and Everything I Know About Love. I think that might honestly be all the non-fiction I read this year. And then last year I read a memoir, the memoir from Matthew Perry, which I can't think of the title right now. It was something, I don't know, Friends, Lovers, and the Great Big Bad Thing or something like that. I'll put it on the screen. And I read Britney Spears' memoir as well, and I think off the top of my head that might be all the nonfiction I've read, at least recently. I would say that my favorite was probably, oof, this is actually difficult. I would say either it was this one, Everything I Know About Love, from Dolly Alderton. Her name? Yeah, Dolly Alderton. So going into this book, I knew this book wasn't really about love all that much at all. I knew it was more about friendship and just living in your 20s. Having that expectation, I did love it very much. But I would say if you go and read this book, do not expect it to be about love in that sense of the word. It is not about romantic love and romantic relationships at all. It makes an appearance, but it's not the main point of the book at all. It's mainly about female friendships and about living in your 20s and the struggles that come with that. And I could relate to a lot in this book. Absolutely not everything. Just also liked the way it was written, like the writing style and the atmosphere. She wrote about living with people that kind of like house sharing with friends or even people you don't really know that well. And I've experienced that also, and I thought that was fun to read about because it was very relatable. So I think I would say this is my favorite, but the Matthew Perry one, which I read 2 years ago now, I also love that very much. So maybe it's a bit of a tie there actually, but I don't have that book physically on my shelf, so I can't show it to you. What book has been on your TBR the longest? This is the book that's been on my TBR the longest. So this is the Dutch book, which is the original as well, but it is available in English if you want to read it. It's the Diary of Anne Frank, and I have actually started and DNF'd it when I was a kid, like when I was 11 maybe or something like that. Well, it is considered a children's book, I think, in the Netherlands. It is also written by Anne when she was, I think, maybe around 15. Well, it spans multiple years, so I don't know. But it is considered a children's book, but it is heavy. Obviously, it is about World War II, and it is also written, I would say it's very slow paced, which at the time I was used to, I don't know, more adventure stories about, I don't know, horses and princesses and whatnot. So this was not really for me at the time, but I have always had it in the back of my mind that I do want to read it one day, because I live in the Netherlands, and Anne Frank quite a big part of Dutch history, I would say, and I've always been interested in knowing the story, reading the story. I visited the museum as well, which is in her actual house. So the museum is basically built into the place where she lived with her family when she had to hide from the Nazis in World War II. So, which is also where this book takes place for the most part. So I do think it's very exciting to read this, and I do definitely want to read it at some point, but it's also kind of slow paced and not something that is on my immediate TBR that I'm very excited about right now. So this book has definitely been on my TBR the longest, being about 12 to 13 years, I think, which is a lot longer than everything else. Question number 9. I think it's 9. Is it 9? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Question number 10, the last question. What is your least favorite book trope? Obviously, there are different tropes in different genres, but I'm thinking of romance tropes because I feel like I hear about them the most. So I'm thinking about like enemies to lovers, friends to lovers, second chance, grumpy sunshine. You've got the age gap trope, which I think is everyone's least favorite, but I don't hate it that much. I wouldn't seek a book out for having age gap, but I don't also feel very put off by it necessarily. I actually would say grumpy sunshine is my least favorite trope, which I think is a bit of an unpopular opinion. Generally just don't like grumpy sunshine books so far, because every time I read one, I feel like it is a bit too much the grumpy character is too grumpy and or the sunshine character is too sunshiny, and it feels fake to me. It feels like it was written to fit the trope rather than the trope fitted the book, if that makes sense. I feel like a good trope has to be kind of fitting the story that the writer has in mind. So they want to write a story about this thing, and then this trope fits the story they want to tell, and then I guess you can use it to advertise your book. But I often feel like a Grumpy Sunshine book is made to be Grumpy Sunshine, and then I don't know, it never feels realistic to me. Those were all of the questions. I think I answered 10 if I counted correctly. So I had a lot of fun with this, and I hope you did too. And I think I'll be making a part 2 at some point, because I would love to answer the questions that are still left in this jar. If you liked my video, please let me know by clicking the button that is, I don't know, I think around here somewhere. And I would love it if you subscribe to my channel. If you click on another one of my videos, that would be super great. Thank you so much for watching.